So welcome to Unit 4. What we're going to talk about throughout Unit 4 is we're going to start off with focusing on managing your footprint tool. We're then going to move on to some of the more intricate footprint chart settings before focusing on functionality. I think that's quite a strong focus point for this Unit 4. We're going to talk a lot about functionality before moving on then ultimately to the advanced footprint application. Now, before I actually move in and we begin this unit, I just want to make sure that you guys recognize the importance of a trading tool. Now, don't allow Unit 4 to almost distract you ultimately from the true purpose of a trading tool. Okay. Remember, the objective of a trading tool is to extract information from the marketplace in a meaningful manner so we can make decisions. Okay. So I'm going to show you a lot of different things you can do now, and you're probably going to get this real urge to go and try them, to suddenly add to your charts. Okay. What I don't want is I don't want to overcomplicate. I don't want to create noise for you ultimately with this unit. I just want to show you some of the more advanced things you can do with the footprint tool so that when you are developing your own strategies in time, if some of these functions can add value to those strategies, by all means utilize them. Okay. What you've got in front of you, these are my notes. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to briefly scroll down on these notes for you guys so that you can have just a brief moment to see what we're going to talk about. You can take maybe some pictures of these notes, maybe even record these notes for future reference. But I will be effectively going through each one of these utilizing the footprint tool. Okay, so we're going to start off obviously with managing the tool, talk a little bit about setup and chart fonts, as well as chart colors, printing, the magnet tool, as well as rescaling certain studies and different chart options. We're then going to talk in the second section about footprint chart settings and tabs. We're then going to move on to the footprint functionality, what style to use, etc., etc. And then we're going to obviously finish Unit 3 with backtesting. Before the advanced footprint settings, where we talk about highlighting, conditional formatting, adding certain price alerts, and then obviously modifications you can make to the general footprint tool. Okay, so that's pretty much what we're going to talk about now. Let's get straight into it. Again, I'm going to go through each one of these step for step, so don't worry. Okay. Where to begin? So this is now, obviously we spoke in Unit 2 about setting up the basic elements of your footprint chart. So this is more or less what you should have in front of you now. Very, very basic, just a simple footprint chart. Maybe your colors are different to mine. That's fine. Okay. I'm going to show you how you can change all of that now in a minute. Okay. So if you want to make changes to the preferences of your overall system, you would obviously click on the top left here. That would be effectively your default setting. So you can see if we came into the chart preferences, we can start off here by looking at some of the defaults that it's currently set to. Okay, so just very briefly, obviously grid lines, that is something that annoys certain traders and it doesn't annoy other traders. For me, I quite like having some sort of grid lines, maybe a solid major and minor division. And if I apply, you'll see simply it's just creating some form of a scale on the chart. Okay, in terms of other things you can have a look at, what I would say is obviously just make sure that, in terms of the labels and values, make sure that if you want display boxes, as you can see in the top left and the bottom left corners, if you want those display boxes, you can see that we've got them, listed here under display value box. So you can untick them if you want and simply remove them. And again, a lot of this is just play around. It's more preference more than anything. So if you want it there, include it. If you don't. Okay. Remember, obviously, as you're making changes in terms of the setup here, this will be your default settings as you go through. Now, one of the last things to pay attention to is this button called continuation. It is quite important now. Continuation is just simply, obviously, when futures contracts roll over, in other words, they move into the forward dated month, continuation will effectively continue showing you the price, and it'll automatically show you the market, or the month, that's trading the most volume. Okay, now, obviously you can see the system default is to have no continuation. In other words, what will happen is you will have your chart come the end of the month will stop showing data, or it won't roll itself automatically. So for me, I suggest you unclick the no continuation, and again I would suggest that you go and click the active rollover when trading activity and optionally equalize closes. In other words, what that's saying is that the contract will automatically roll. The software will automatically put you in the front month as soon as the volume in the front month is more than the volume in the current month. Okay, so for me, I recommend that. Obviously, there are other options you can utilize, but we're going to utilize active rollover in terms of when the volume moves. Okay, so that's what you want to look at in terms of the system. Now, the next play we're going to move on to, again, we're going to cut up to the setup, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the chart fonts. Okay, this is now simply if you want to change the text, if you want to change the size of the text, make something bold, etc., etc. This is where you would do all that. If you don't like it and you make a few boo-boos and you want to go back, obviously you can always come in the bottom left and restore to the original default. Again, what I would say is don't spend a great deal of time playing with these things. Just find something that looks okay and save it and then move on. Now, one of the features that's really good about this tool is that when you do find a feature that you really like, okay, let's say for instance you've created all your charts, you've been utilizing it for a couple of months, and then you all of a sudden want to make a change to all of your charts or some of your charts. Okay, you can simply come in this bottom right here and you can apply it to this chart on this page, you can apply it to all your charts on this page, you can apply it to all your charts on all pages, and you can apply it to all new charts. So you can make changes relatively easy on all your charts, some of your pages, etc., etc. Okay, so don't worry if right now you don't get everything perfectly. At a later stage, you can come back and make changes across all of your charts in one go, as opposed to having to do them all individually. Okay. Let's go back to setup again. This time we're going to talk about some of the chart colors. Now, when you opened obviously your footprint chart, it might have looked really, really ugly. Okay, now what I'm going to say, the first thing to pay attention to is when you start looking at the colors, just remember the footprint tool is very much a contrast tool. In other words, it's a tool where we want to see contrast quite easily. Now, that's why I either utilize a black background or a white background, because I really want to see those contrasts as aggressively as possible. So for me, either white or black on the background, that's quite important. And then again, in terms of your scale text, your right and left text, that's all these things. So on your right side, you've got prices, you've got time at the bottom, and you've got all your grid lines. Those are pretty much these sort of three boxes here. You've obviously got your grid lines, which are white, and you've got a whole bunch of other things lower down that you can play with. What I suggest you do is go through each one of them, click on it, choose a color, push apply, and see what happens. Okay, that's simply the best way to determine what each one of those boxes do and familiarize yourself with what the changes can do. And again, obviously, if you only want to make a change to this chart, all your charts, some of your charts, you've got that functionality on the right side. Okay, so now we've got our colors. We've kind of got a good little look at what the chart looks like. One other feature within the setup which is really good is obviously this demo trading. Now, the demo trading, again, down the line, what I would say is ultimately what the demo trading is going to allow you to do is it's going to allow you to effectively trade alongside on your footprint. Okay, so you can see here you've obviously got a bid and an offer, and these are the live prices, as you can see here on the bottom right. These are the live prices of the current WTI oil price. So, whilst the strategy is in play, you can effectively trade alongside it simply at the click of a button. Now, what I will say, most important, guys, do not be distracted by this tool. Okay, this is something that you only really want to start paying attention to as you move on towards the strategy section. What I would advise is completely eliminate this functionality until you start unit 6 to 15. And just make sure that you're not, when you're going through obviously the coursework and you're doing your practice sessions and your drill sessions, rather just don't have this here, because what it's going to do is, one, it's going to distract you. Okay, you're going to feel the urge to suddenly apply a strategy that you might not necessarily completely understand yet. But two, what it might do is it might just draw upon your old ways of thinking. You might just look at a chart and there might be some support, and you might be like, well, let me just buy it, to trial. It's just a play around. Okay, so important. This trial with the free simulator, effectively you want to utilize that in a manner where you can practice the strategies that you're learning. Okay, so if you remember in the 30-day challenge, as I explained in Unit 1, and hopefully you've printed off, on your practice days, after every unit where we discuss and develop a new strategy, the very next day is a practice session. In those sessions, when you've done the drill work, you've found a couple of examples, by all means, feel free to have a footprint up just like we've got here, and feel free to simply buy and sell accordingly. Okay, that's how I would advise you use the demo trading. Obviously, if you want to get rid of it or minimize it, this little box in the top left here, just simply click on it. Or if you look on the left side of your footprint, you can simply click on the snap trader, back and forward, and ultimately that'll just keep bringing it in. Okay, now let's move on just to one or two of the other things, or some of the other important things upon your toolbar on the left side. Obviously, print functionality, that speaks for itself. Now, a lot of traders on the Axia floor do still print their charts, to look at them, to annotate them, to draw on them, to really sort of spend time just focused on the numbers and not being distracted by other things. However, obviously, if you're someone that's a little bit paper conscious and you prefer to not waste paper, you can simply get a snipping tool. Okay, now if you go to your start on your computer and you type in snipping tool, you'll find that most computers nowadays have some form of a snipping tool, and you can simply just go new, and you can simply just select the region you want, draw all over it, make a nice tick, talk about certain imbalances, etc., etc. Right click, copy the picture and paste it into either a Word document or, as you'll see, a Evernote document as I'm utilizing. Okay, then in terms of the next tool, this is called a magnet tool. Now, the magnet tool is something that works particularly well, not so much in the footprint, but what it does effectively is a lot of the time when we select a line, for instance, as I've done here, we might not get close enough to the price we're looking at, maybe to a previous high or a previous low, or maybe a trend line. So what the magnet does is it effectively it attaches itself. So if I'm hovering maybe at the 05s, it'll attach itself straight down to the 04s. Okay, as soon as you click on it, you can set the level of magnetism within the tool, and you can see it asks for magnet strength. It's advised that you set it at least 50. This makes it relatively sensitive, and will at least find the price that it's looking for. Now remember, this is not an ideal tool for the footprint. It's better suited to the candlestick charts, so we won't really be utilizing it much in the footprint tool. Now, something that really came of interest to me, and I'm going to share this with you, and I'm going to bring back the Evernote, is that, okay, for me, I'd never known what the magnet button did. Right, now, this is the wonderful thing about this charting package, is that it's got an incredibly useful amount of assistance. Okay, so as you can see, I've got a nice little picture here, and all I did to go and understand what this tool did, and again, I might not explain everything very well to you, but in that case, you've got a wonderful info tool. So if you want to get more information about something, you can simply come up to the you can simply come up to the support in the top right here. You can go and open the help, and you'll see a nice toolbar like this will pop up. And as soon as you get this up, you can just go and type in the search function here and type in magnet. Okay, and once you have magnet up, you'll see it'll bring up some pointer tools or some chart toolbar. And there it'll explain it to you, okay? And that's really crucial because, there are going to be times, maybe not in this course, but later on, that there's certain things you want to understand better, understand the functionality, and you can simply use that very easy help function. Now, as I will explain to you at the end again, there are two other options for you in terms of support. If you're still not sure, you can then obviously go and talk to the You can obviously go and talk to the live chat. Those are the people on the support of CQG Market Delta, and they will assist you in terms of any kind of questions. But also what's very, very useful is you'll see a lot of the charting package. Whenever you hover over something, you'll see, for instance, if we hover over the magnet, all sorts of information will come up as we're hovering over it. The same will be as you go through various tools. When you hover over it, it will give a nice brief explanation of effectively what the tool's doing. So there you can see we hovered over profile. It says change pointer tool to profile area, and this will be the same for all these sorts of bars on the left. Add a study, it says. In terms of magnets, it says to us turn on the magnet. Okay, now what we're going to move on to is then some of the other tools that you can find here. Obviously the first 5 here, don't worry too much. This is just simply if you want to change this chart to either a bar chart, a candlestick, a footprint, a line chart, a Renko, whatever it might be. This is where you'll change the toolbar to any of these other tools. And then you've obviously also got some of the basic studies, whether it's the fib retracement, a profile, all these sorts of things along the left side. Now, don't worry too much about this. Again, that's just for ease of use. If you want to switch to a bar chart, simply click on it. If you want to switch, you can go to a bar chart very quickly. We can come back to the footprint. We can do all sorts of things. We can move. We can go and add maybe a volume weighted average price. And it'll very quickly add the study onto the footprint. Okay, now just in terms of some of the other buttons here, we can see a rescaling tool. So what this is going to do is a lot of the time, you might have a lot of information or you might have a relatively small screen. So all that's going to do effectively, if you have a lot of information and it cannot fit within your page, the moment you go and rescale, it's just going to rescale the picture so that it all fits onto your one page. Okay, so that's pretty much the toolbar on the left explained. Again, it's more just preference, okay? It's about making sure everything is as you like it. Now, I suggest spend a little bit of time with this, particularly the preferences, particularly the colors and the fonts. When you found something you like, then move on to the next section. Okay, and the reason you want to do that obviously is you don't want to keep coming backwards and forwards making changes. Get all your changes done very early on so that you can then move on to focusing on the actual footprint and developing the strategies. Okay, now the most important thing, when you are happy with everything, you've got the save button here on the top of your toolbar. What we did set up obviously in Unit 2 was the autosave function. So again, make sure you set up the autosave function. If you didn't, just make sure you're always saving the current page so that if you do exit or something goes wrong, you're not going to lose all the work you've done. Okay, that's the end of the first part of this Unit 4. Let's now move a little bit into some of the more interesting stuff and actually talk a little bit about some of the footprint chart settings. So I'm just going to bring this up again. What we're going to talk about now is we're going to talk about color lines. Again, this is particularly important, and I'm going to show you the different colors for certain things so that when we move on to the strategies, you will understand why I have certain different color lines. We'll also talk about organization in terms of your tabs. Okay, so let's start off with, in fact, I'm going to start off with the tabs and I'll come back to the color lines. The first thing is organization is key. Okay, remember if you're trading multiple markets or you have a number of things you're focusing on and a number of strategies, you have to be very, very organized, okay, because you're taking in a lot of information and you need to be able to make effective decisions on that information. Right, so if things aren't organized and aren't where you expect them to see and it's quite messy, again, your decision making is going to be messy and ultimately it's just going to create anxiety and you're going to lose money as a result. Alright, so the first thing is if we, let's say we've now found our bar and we're really happy with it, our colors and everything's good, we can then simply go and duplicate the chart you see in front of us by clicking on the plus. Okay, so these two are effectively the exact same chart. Now what we can go and do is we can just go and rename this, maybe call it oil and we call it rotation and push enter. We can do the same for the first one, maybe we call this oil time, for T for time, and we push enter, and then we can go click another one and we can name this oil and we can call this imbalance. Okay, and I'll go through all this in a bit of time when we start talking about the individual functionality. All right, now I would do the same thing for every other market. Okay, Some people might have separate pages or one whole page. Obviously what you're seeing in front of you is one whole page. So some traders might have one page where the footprint fills the entire page, and some traders might do something like this, where they have maybe 3 of these across the way. Okay, if you wanted to create 3, you'd simply come into the top left, you can replicate and drag, and we can replicate and drag and effectively have 3 different footprints all in one view. Okay, so obviously now, again, you can only see so much information, so again, it's all at your discretion, but that option is available for you. Okay, for me, I'm going to keep it nice and simple. I'm going to keep all of our markets, for instance, in one long tab. And again, the reason I prefer it this way is because I feel if you have, again, if we go back, if we had, say, 3 of these, you can see very quickly how you can be drawn into too much information. Right? If this was, say, 3 different markets, obviously you can observe 3 different strategies at the same time, but you're being drawn into a lot of information. So it's all about, the risk reward. More information potentially means, less effective execution. Okay. So let's close that down and let's move on to the next bit of functionality. Now, what I will say, guys, make sure the more footprint charts you add, the more work you're going to have to do. What I mean by that, well, every day you're obviously going to be putting all sorts of lines on your chart. You're going to be looking at certain studies, informational boxes, as I'll show you in a minute. And the more you do on your charts, just remember the more fixing and cleaning up and tidying you have to do. So again, factor that in. At the end of every day, you've got to get rid of lines that are no longer relevant. Maybe get rid of info boxes that are no longer relevant. Just keep it neat and tidy, all right? The more tidy you keep it, the better prepared and better execution you're going to have as a result. Okay, now let's talk a little about colors, because this is particularly important. You'll see when we start talking about the functionality with a footprint in terms of conditional formatting and that, this is what you want to do. You want to keep things in such a manner that you can just simply focus on making decisions. Right? The time you're spending on this course and setting up your footprint, you want to spend a lot of time doing that, so that when you get to trading the market, you're simply just making decisions. Okay, you're not spending time fixing your footprint or cleaning it up. You're just making decisions based on the information coming through the tool. Okay, so the color lines. Very briefly, I'm going to bring this back. In fact, I'm going to take a snip of it and I'm going to move it to the top left corner, and then you can obviously see it quite nicely. So just take a brief picture of this. This is effective throughout the course. These are the colors I'm going to utilize. Now, I'm going to go through them and I'm going to plot them on the chart for you and show you how to change them. So I effectively have 7 different colors. Now, again, you don't have to adopt these color scheme. You can adopt your own color scheme. You might not even like the idea or the principle behind the color scheme. But the reason I have it's very simple. Every one of these colors is identifying something for me so that I can effectively execute one of the 10 strategies you're going to learn. Now, for me, brown colors represent daily highs and lows. Okay, so whenever there's a daily high and low, in my debrief the previous day, I go and put those brown lines in to show me the daily high and low. Now, obviously that's very effective for breakout trading or for, extensions on previous day's highs, or maybe potential imbalance strategies. In terms of pink, right, you'll see a bright pink simply indicates the weekly high and low. In terms of red, these are just very important reference points. So any kind of points of reference that I thought were valid from the previous day. Let's say, for instance, we had a key economic data piece, European CPI. I would always put a reference point at the starting price of the CPI and maybe even the high and low that was left as a result of that economic data. Okay. Again, the reason I do this is just that it's a reference point. It's drawing my attention to this having been quite an important reference on economic data. Then orange, I utilize for high absorption. Again, I've spoken a little bit about this in Unit 3, what absorption is, what it looks like, and you'll see me talk about this extensively throughout the strategy sessions. So for me, I use orange to signal where there's been some really high absorption or really, really big delta shifts in price. Okay, in terms of dark blue, this would signal really key breakout areas. Now, when we talk about the breakout strategy right towards the end of the course, obviously this, breakouts, we tend to use a couple of different charts, not just a footprint. So for me, identifying the breakouts, I always like to put a nice dark blue line. So that signals number 1. I don't want to go against the break of that blue line, But equally, I want to make sure that when that break occurs, I'm watching that price action around the blue line quite closely. Right? Turquoise shows us where there's initiative, so it shows us where someone has stepped in, either a buyer or seller, and they're stepping in an aggressive manner. Okay, and then obviously green shows me any kind of imbalances in the market. Again, I briefly introduced the imbalances to you in Unit 3. When we get to the actual strategy session on imbalances, you're going to understand this very well and how it effectively works. Okay, so let's go and apply these now. Let's go and show you how to apply these lines very simply. Let's say this was the high of the previous day in terms of 58.60. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to apply lines quite quickly. So if we quickly go on to a time-based session here, if I went to modify and I simply went to the source, I can see it's on bar, which means I can make it time-based. Now, if you want to quickly put in weekly high-low, daily high-low, maybe some initiative points, etc., you can simply come and right-click on here, change the interval to a daily or a weekly. So we can see currently we've got the set to a daily. So very simply, I can go put a line there and a line at the top, and I can see now the low of oil yesterday was 57.44 and the high was 58.12. Now in terms of weekly, I can do the same thing. I can right click, chart interval, and go weekly. Okay, obviously at the moment this footprint is only available on intraday or daily, so we're going to go back to the daily, and if we get the weekly out here, you can see obviously the day now is Thursday, so it's Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Monday. This was obviously last week's low, and this was last week's high. So again, we can go and right click on the line now. We can go and set the horizontal color and make it nice and pink. Okay, and we can do the same for the pink. Alright, so straight away, you've got the daily high and low, you've got the weekly high and low. Now, let's say, for instance, this was an important reference point. Maybe that's the point that the WTI oil inventory data came out, and we can simply leave that red line there. Okay, we can then go and put an orange line. So let's go find, we saw, obviously yesterday, we absorbed 20,000 or almost 40,000 contracts at price point 71. So we can go and make a nice orange color. Okay. And then we can go and obviously put a dark blue. So obviously this 58.60 is a very important level. We can see it's been a really big turning point in the market, and we had some big rejection. So this might be some really important reference point or a breakout point. So we go and make a nice dark blue color, and we put it right next to the pink line. So we can see a really important area developing there. We can then go look for some initiative. So we can see the market really initiated off this high as well. We can see some real low volume areas here, and we can sort of go and look and say, well, maybe price point 41, that's where it initiated from. That's where the sellers stepped in an aggressive manner. And then last, we go and highlight some of the imbalances. Again, we need to find those imbalances. What I'd say, maybe let's say, for instance, this little area over here, we can go highlight that and say, well, here's an effective imbalance left in the market, which at some point we know by definition should fill out. Okay, now I know I've kept this footprint on a daily chart, and I've done this in a very primitive manner, but the important thing to understand is the importance of color lines, okay? Because as the market's now moving around and there's a lot of information, a lot of things going on at the same time, I don't have to think a great deal, okay? Let's say the oil starts to approach this area, bang, I'm switched on, I know there's a weekly high as well as a key breakout area, I simply apply breakout strategy rules. Okay, let's say we come back down to the 71, bang, I know what the absorption and auctioning strategy is, I simply wait for it and execute when we retest it. Right? I know that the market tends to fill out these imbalances, so when we get to this imbalance, we trade the imbalance strategy. And that's all it is, guys. It's putting these lines as markers so that you can quickly make effective decisions. Okay, that's the color lines then, and that's the end of now the part 2 of Unit 4.